You hear the name Michael Burry, and you immediately think of one thing, right? The guy who called the 2008 crash. But what if that legend, that entire story, is now being used as the most powerful tool in a game you don't even know you're playing? Let's dive in.
I mean, for the past year, you couldn't escape headlines just like this one. They're everywhere. The hero of The Big Short, the genius who saw what no one else could, he's back. The story the media is selling is simple and it's powerful. The prophet has returned to warn all of us about another epic crash.
And this is the number that just stops you in your tracks. A bet with a notional value of over $1 billion against the market. Now, when you see a number that big attached to that name, it's designed to make you nervous, right? To make you think, oh no, here we go again. But here's the twist. What if that feeling, that little pit in your stomach, is exactly what they want you to feel? What if the real story of Michael Burry isn't about predicting the future, but about shaping what you do in the present? That's the big question we're going to unpack here. Okay, so it all kicks off with his latest, absolutely massive prediction. Burry has taken a huge short position, basically betting big against the darlings of the AI revolution, specifically NVIDIA and Palantir. And we're not talking about predicting a little dip here. He's calling for a total catastrophic collapse. And just look at the sheer scale of this thing. This isn't some minor market correction he's forecasting. Burry is betting that by 2026 or 2027, these absolute giants are going to lose over 70% of their value. 70%! A drop like that doesn't just, rattle the tech world. That would mean a full-blown market crash for the S&P 500. So what's his big reason? Well, this is his whole argument right here, straight from a post on X. He's basically claiming these big tech companies are cooking the books. Here's the deal. They buy billions of dollars in AI chips. Normally, you'd write those off over, say, 3 years. But he's saying they're stretching that useful life to 6 years on paper. It's a neat little accounting trick, right? It makes their yearly expenses look way smaller and their profits look way bigger. He calls it one of the biggest frauds of our time. But, and this is a huge but, when you actually run the numbers, his entire argument just kind of falls apart. Even if you say, okay, let's assume he's right, it's fraud. For a company like Meta, this accounting change only messes with their net profit by maybe 5 to 10%. That's a bad headline, for sure, but it is not a market-crashing catastrophe. And by the way, this stuff isn't some big secret. They report these changes publicly. So the evidence for this doomsday scenario, it's just not there, which really makes you wonder, what's the real game here? And to figure that out, we have to go back to where the whole legend began, The Big Short. We all saw the movie. We all know the story. But was it really that clean-cut work of genius we were all told it was? Or was it something else entirely? The movie myth is super simple, right? A lone genius sees the truth no one else can. The reality, though, was a total mess. It was a high-stakes, chaotic gamble where Burry was burning through other people's money, facing these insane losses, and actually had to legally block his own angry investors from pulling their cash out. Oh, and those legendary profits he supposedly made? Yeah, never officially verified. Let's actually walk through the real timeline, because it's wild. In 2005, he starts buying these insurance policies that have an expiration date. The clock is ticking. But the market doesn't crash, so poof, the money's gone. 2006, he doubles down and loses over half the fund. His investors revolt, so he literally traps their money in the fund. By 2007, he is on the absolute brink of losing everything. It's only then, at the very last second before his bets expire worthless, that the market finally turns his way. He cashes out in '08 and immediately shuts down his company. See, that's not a story of a prophet seeing the future. That's a story of a gambler who almost lost it all. And this real version of the story leaves us with some really awkward questions. Like, if you just pulled off the greatest trade in history, why would you immediately shut down your fund right when billions of dollars should be knocking on your door? And why were those final profit numbers never actually audited? And maybe the biggest red flag of all, when he did come back in 2013, why wasn't Wall Street lining up to give him their money? The legend and the reality, they just don't add up. So that brings us to his track record since 2008. Because this pattern of behavior we just saw, it didn't stop there. Oh no, in fact, it gets so much worse. Okay, let's start with a big one. Remember 2021? Burry went on an all-out public war against Tesla. He called it a huge bubble, took a massive short position, and told everyone who would listen that it was going down. And what happened next? Well, right after Burry said Tesla was going to crash and burn, the stock more than doubled from its lows. Anyone who listened to the prophet and followed him got absolutely wrecked. And Burry? He just quietly closed his position, probably for a massive loss.
But it gets even more obvious. January 2023, he sends out this one-word tweet that just explodes across the financial world. Sell. Simple as that. He told reporters a huge crash was coming. So what happened? Well, his tweet literally marked the bottom. I mean, to the day. Right after he told everyone to sell everything, the market took off on one of the strongest rallies of the entire year. So, once again, all the regular folks who listened to him sold at the absolute bottom, and you can bet the big institutions were right there to scoop it all up. Are you starting to see the pattern here?
Okay, so this pattern, it leads us to a really powerful and honestly kind of disturbing idea. What if Michael Burry isn't a prophet who just keeps getting it wrong? What if his public persona, his legend, is being used for something else entirely? What if he's become Wall Street's perfect perception weapon? So what do I mean by a perception weapon? Well, it's pretty simple. It's when you take a famous person or a powerful story, like the legend of the Big Short, and the media amplifies it to trick everyday investors into doing something that hurts them. The goal is always the same. Use the legend to stir up fear and trigger a wave of panic selling that you can predict. And the playbook for this is shockingly simple. Step 1, you build the icon. You make sure everyone knows the Hollywood version of the 2008 story, The Prophet. Step 2, when the market feels a little shaky, you blast his scary predictions everywhere, every news channel, every website. Step 3, this triggers panic. Regular investors get scared and sell their stocks to avoid the crash they're being told is coming. And then, the final step, step 4, Wall Street comes in and quietly buys all those assets at a massive discount. It is a huge, huge transfer of wealth happening right out in the open. But look, if you're still a little skeptical, I get it. But there's one last piece to this puzzle. And this is the part of the story that turns this from just a theory into something, well, chillingly probable. And here it is. In November of 2023, right after the whole world found out about his so-called Big Short 2.0, Michael Burry's company just ceased to exist. That's right. Shortly after his filings revealed this massive billion-dollar bet to the world, the one that got blasted on every news channel, his company, Scion Asset Management, deregistered with the SEC. It literally vanished. Just think about that for a second. Why on earth would a company make a billion-dollar bet that is supposed to be their entire strategy for the next couple of years and then immediately dissolve itself? It makes absolutely zero sense. Unless the bet itself was never the real point. The real point was the headline. And that leaves us with one last big question. When you see the media pushing the predictions of a guy who is consistently, spectacularly wrong, at the exact moments when him being wrong benefits the big players the most, you have to ask yourself, if they are using this legend to make you panic, could that be the ultimate signal to do the exact opposite?